do the best you can. I mean, at the end of the day, there is an audience and there is a following of someone who would like to read that. So I really just try to keep that in mind. I'm working for a bigger cause and we do have an audience, or when I was working with Hypebeast or Highsnob, we do have an audience that people are looking to read these articles. So at some point it'll land on someone's eyes and hopefully it catches their attention. You really just have to keep that in mind. Not everything can be for you.
Welcome to Theoretically Speaking, hosted by Victoria Herrera and Brent Javier, produced by Next Theory. From the Philippines to the world, this is an interview series with creative entrepreneurs, tastemakers, and change agents. We dissect the journey they took from dream to reality, exchanging stories from the past, motivations in the present, to ideas for the future. Hey everyone, you are plugged in to Theoretically Speaking. We are rattling off some super dope guests, lining them up for your thirsty appetite about the creative culture, from athletes, musicians, brand strategists, photographers, editors, and everything in between. Today's guest is my family for real. He literally used to pick me up from school. And if I had an older brother to look up to from fashion to being responsible, it would be this guy.
He is an editorial professional who has been published in several noteworthy publications, including Highsnobiety, Paws, and Fashion Beans. He previously worked at Hypebeast as an editor, overseeing a small team of writers responsible for covering relevant pop culture musings. And today, he is the head of content for artificial intelligence fashion platform UCL.
One of the most down-to-earth people we know. This guy is my cousin, Rob Patos. So what's up, Rob?
What's up, Rob?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're good. I mean, I'm in Manila and you guys are where? Canada, right?
Toronto.
Canada. Toronto. Okay.
Yeah.
How is it with you guys over there with quarantine?
We've all heard the term, we're living in unprecedented times, and that kind of goes without saying. Even now with my team, I'm actually fortunate to be working for a company where we can still kind of operate. Since we've now been working from home, a lot of our meetings are centered around like checking on each other's mental health to see how everyone's doing.
Oh, that's dope.
Because we're all kind of dealing with this together and no one knows what the outcome is. It's a tough situation, but we're all trying our best to be there for each other while trying to balance, being productive at work. So it's been tough.
I love that. I love that you're checking on each other's mental health and still providing that support system.
It's important, especially now, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of businesses would be, traditionally it would be business as usual, but now I feel like a lot of businesses are really looking at the relationships in team and really putting that in the forefront and how their teams are doing mentally, emotionally, financially, seeing how they're managing everything from a day-to-day basis.
A couple questions from what you said, or what you just spoke about that I wanted to ask that we could learn, like me and Vicky and also our team at Next Theory. Basically from 2015 or something, you're already like managing people remotely.
Yeah.
For
exactly.
HB, right? So you're like expert at this. Thing happened and you're like, oh, I know exactly what to do because I've been doing this for like 5 years already, like managing people remotely. What's a learning or something that you can share with us on how we can do stuff remotely?
In terms of what you're mentioning, Brent, we do have these kind of daily stand-ups, as I kind of mentioned at the top of our discussion, where we all kind of get on to each other, like kind of log in, kind of talk about what our day will be like, any obstacles that someone may anticipate running into, and basically how the team can kind of help one another out. Again, the main thing is to kind of check on how everyone's doing, at the same time, to be honest, holding each other accountable so we know what other people are doing, and at the same time fostering collaboration. But to your point on how to manage that, it's a hard question to answer because depending on the team you have, answers will vary. But I think that it's important to have structure, to have someone who can moderate the meeting, to kind of keep it in line so it doesn't go too far off track, but at the same time, giving everyone an equal opportunity to voice exactly what they're going through and what they're planning to, and then having time at the end to get everyone's input, because it's not just a one-sided communication platform where I'm asking you what you're going to do so I know what you're doing. As we all know, communication runs both ways, especially with a team that's having to learn how to work remotely together. We want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to shine, so to speak, get their point across and see what everyone is working on. But for me personally, outside of just the kind of meeting portion, I'm someone that is I conform to a lot of structure, and that's just the way I operate. So I have a set schedule almost. So I wake up at a certain time. I tend to work out before I start working. I log in, I check my emails at a certain time. So by the time 9 o'clock hits, I have XYZ already done before my team logs in. So they can see that I'm
Can you tell us
prepared
the
and I know
times
myself
of
that I am.
what you do things at? I just want to know, just like
Yeah, for sure.
what time do you wake up? What time do you have your coffee, your first sip of coffee?
7:34. What are you doing?
Let me know your structure.
At 8:07 a.m.
I'm pretty. It's funny. I'm like my wife said. She says I'm like absolutely like military robotic with my timing. I am. My first alarm goes off at 5. And normally between 5:15, 5:30 is when I'm like kind of checking on like Twitter stuff. And that's more just for entertainment while drinking my coffee. Once that's done, I'm getting prepared to. Well, I can't go to the gym now, so I do my workouts at home. I just do a quick kind of like 20-minute, 30-minute kind of
every day.
Like every day, like military. Even on Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't deviate. And I do that just so it becomes habit. So by the time I'm done my workout, that's probably about 6:15ish. Hop in the shower. As soon as I'm done the shower, that's when I'm checking emails, reaching out to clients, and then sourcing news content for my team to write. And then if I have between from like 8:30 to 9, I might be just kind of shutting everything off mentally before my team gets on at 9. By 9, I'm like, I hit the ground running, and everyone knows that. So it's expected, not only for them, but for myself too. And I have to make sure that I project that to them so they know that it's time to work.
Rob was working for Hypebeast in Canada. What time were you waking up just to do the hours that you needed to? That was crazy, bro. Like, I was like, you're nuts, man. I quit.
Yeah.
I don't know.
When I was working for Hypebeast, although I was in Manila and Hong Kong are in the same time zone. So my shift was from 9 a.m. Hong Kong, Manila time, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. But every time I would fly back to Canada, and this was just not for anything work related, more just to kind of visit family for Christmas. I would, come back for like 2 months at a time. And, I can't take time off from Hypebeast. The news never sleeps, fashion never sleeps. So I would be working from 6 p.m. and then I'd run through until 6 a.m. I'd work through the entire night when everyone else was sleeping. My parents thought I was nuts. My wife thought I was crazy. I was missing every party. I wasn't seeing my friends. It was all just because I loved working for Hypebeast. And again, I had a team that I still had to run, so I had to do it, no complaining.
I guess it's when you love what you do. It's not work, I guess, to a certain extent, right?
Everyone has heard that millions of times, but it actually rings true. It actually really does.
Let's rewind it back a little bit. So for me, I've known a lot of what you've gone through growing up, but I guess more than anything, you're a writer. You want to go through with us your journey a little bit, how you started writing, because you weren't a writer before. Like when you were in Canada, you definitely were. Just shed some light on how you became where your position is now today.
Sure. To anyone else in the editorial field, I don't know if my background comes across as, it's definitely not picture perfect. And I say that because, as you're alluding to, kind of growing up in Canada, it definitely wasn't a field that I had thought I could do or wasn't even interested in. Just to kind of back it up, going through school, English wasn't something that really stuck out to me. When I went to college, I didn't study English lit or journalism, so it really wasn't something that was targeted. It was something that I kind of steered into. So in terms of professional, when I was living in Canada, I came from a highly corporate background. I've done everything from recruitment to sales, insurance, third-party collections. But it really wasn't until I moved to the Philippines, which was in, I believe, 2011, where I really wanted to reach out creatively to see what I can do. I have nothing against it, but in terms of working in a corporate environment, I really didn't find it conducive to, I guess you can say, my creativity and kind of, I don't want to say mental health, but it was something that really, really wasn't making me happy. So my move to Philippines kind of spurred something in me to try to find something that I really wanted to do. Yes, I remember kind of moving to the Philippines, and I think it was a year into it, I kind of hit a crossroads where I was like, all right, so I left home, sold my house, said bye to all my friends. I really have to try to go after something that I want, or else I kind of made this move in vain. So I kind of identified what I wanted to do, and I've always kind of been interested in fashion. I've always been interested in reading. But in terms of fashion, I wasn't creative in the traditional sense, meaning I don't design clothes, I don't model. So I kind of found a way to tap into that, and I found that through writing. And that's kind of really how it started. Just kind of going for it, just kind of going all in, not settling for an office type job.
I mean, Vicky's a writer too, so you guys have that common ground.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is that when you were writing, did you feel like there were things that you've always wanted to express that you couldn't, but you're able to express it through writing?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the way that I viewed in my head, as I was kind of mentioning, I'm not creative in the traditional sense. And I think what I mean by that, a lot of people think creativity in terms of singing or dancing or writing, and that really wasn't anything that I guess you could say I was interested or could do. So I really gravitated towards writing because that was my creative outlet. Like you mentioned, it was a way for me to express what I was feeling in a way that I felt comfortable. I'm not someone who is active in front of the camera, whether it be on social media or, even when a camera's pointed my way, I kind of shy up a little bit. So writing allowed me to be kind of behind the scenes, but really still have a chance to have my voice. And that's kind of really why I guess I liked it so much.
If you're in the process of writing and you have a writer's block, how do you go through that?
Good question, because that does happen quite a bit. It may sound cliche, but it's not really something that you can push through. I found that because writing is a creative process, I mean, you could really, really try to write, but it might not be your best work. So it helps to get up and take a walk. I might put a podcast on, which is really something that I do all the time. Podcasts are a good way to kind of jog your mind a little bit, to hear other people and hear their journey and things that they had to overcome in order to get to where they are. I mean, it kind of helps take my mind off the specific piece that I'm writing, yet at the same time still be in a creative sphere, which really helps me a lot. Music does the same thing as well.
Yeah, and when it comes to some of the publications you've written for in the past, like Hypenobiety and Hypebeast, have you ever felt pressure in that job when you were writing for them?
Yeah, I've written for quite a lot of publications, but the two you just mentioned, High Snob and Hypebeast, one thing that I learned early on in terms of the actual writing, a lot of the, for example, artists or designers that we would have to write about would actually read the blog. I don't really want to name drop, but I've actually exchanged emails with quite a few famous designers who say that they've read the piece or they've actually asked to switch out a picture. And I mean, that's just verification that they've actually looked at your post and they are paying attention. So just kind of knowing that puts a tremendous amount of pressure. Plus, at the same time, with working at Hypebeast, we were responsible for so much. So, if a high-end designer brand or, for example, someone like Nike had a special release, they would often contact Hypebeast with an embargo saying that they wouldn't release it to any other press outlet for a 48-hour block, which really puts the pressure on because, I mean, they are entrusting you to break this news to the world, basically. So there was a lot of pressure in that. I can also specifically touch on with Hypebeast because I was an editor in a remote setting. One of my early challenges was to lead a team while not being physically in the office. I mean, it's hard to kind of step it into a lead type role in any job, but to do it in a remote environment where people are actually in an office that you're not, it posed a little bit of problems. There was this whole narrative to lead a team and then not knowing who I was presented some challenges, but the body of work, I think, spoke for itself and I was able to kind of overcome that, which was a huge accomplishment for me.
Yeah, for sure. And when it came to overcoming the pressure, what were some of the strategies that worked for you?
To be honest, just sticking to it. The things that were happening weren't going to change. I mean, it's not like I can tell someone to not read my article. That's why I was writing, to get eyes on it. So just to come to the realization that was part of the job and, embrace it. People are actually reading your stuff and people who are in the positions of influence. It's just a matter of accepting that and kind of taking that on as a healthy challenge. It still happens to this day, so it's great. I love it. It definitely pushes me.
Since we talked about Hypebeast, something that I think a lot of people want to know or just get a tip, how do people get posts up on Hypebeast? Like, how does Hypebeast pick up on a idea and then run with it?
Okay. It's a question that even to this day, I still get asked quite a bit. So, sorry, just to back up, are you talking about, for example, like a new designer or someone who wants content up on the site? Is that what you're referring to?
Sure, like, I'm sure there's thousands of people that just send in stuff that they hope gets
Okay,
posted by Hypebeast. Like, what's the
right.
process? Who gets
Oh,
selected? Who doesn't? Why not?
okay, so basically, we do have a general editorial email where anyone can send in anything, whether it's a press release, a lookbook, a video. And then as the editors, we have like a team of editors in each office. We're responsible for kind of going through each press material, each lookbook to see if we feel that the Hypebeast audience or the High Snob audience would be interested in. There's no black and white metrics to say who goes up. So it's not like if you're a new designer, we go on your Instagram, and if you don't have a certain amount of followers, we're not going to post you. It's all about the story you're telling first and foremost, especially when it comes to studio publications like High Snob and Hypebeast. It's so visual driven. So if you send in images that we find tell a story, at the same time, we can tell a story for you that we think would be interesting to the public, then there's no reason that why we couldn't do that. So whether it is an established brand or someone brand new, let's say in Spain, who has a lookbook that they want posted, if the visuals are strong and the story is compelling, we'll go ahead with that. But it is something where the editors will discuss if it's something where it's not all like unanimous. Each person has a say, but it's still a decision that has to be made between everyone.
Awesome. So, Rob, in your opinion, what makes a good story?
Okay, so to be honest, good question. Without thinking about it too much, if I was going through, for example, my inbox, or I get a lot of, for example, lookbooks sent to me through Instagram or LinkedIn, I'm looking again for the visuals, and I'm looking for if this person has a story to tell. And what I mean by that is much more than just the clothes themselves, or if it's a song, like whatever, or like the actual track. It's what inspired them to actually create, and almost in a sense, what they want the audience to get from whatever it is they're creating. So if, for example, if it's a piece of clothing, if they can kind of describe to me what they want the public to feel when they're wearing it, I think that creates a great story. So with that, it's more than just the garments themselves. It's more about the vision that they have and the person themselves. I think that makes a great story. And it
Yeah,
goes hand in hand with visuals, I think.
yeah, because I mean, some of the things that we're discussing in the team, and sometimes with our clients, right? If we're doing PR, it's like, how do you make sure that this story is worth telling? That when we send it out, people will obviously, I know it's up to the editors to receive it, but we also want to be mindful about how we're crafting stories as well. And we all see it online. There's that huge culture of like the clickbait titles. So, how do you feel about that?
It's kind of hard to say because I'll be completely honest. A lot of the publications I've written for, in a sense, we don't like to use the word clickbait, but we do want, obviously, every publication wants a title that'll nab your attention. I mean, that's understandable. But just to kind of go a little back in something you said, something that I just kind of remembered, the managing editor of Hypebeast actually once told me, I still remember to this day, a compelling story would be is if you, for example, see a headline or if someone tells you about something, and within the first 10 seconds, if you're excited to hit share and send it to your friends, that's a good sign that it's a compelling story. And that's something that I still think of to this day. So he basically was saying, if you see a lookbook or if you see a press release and without thinking about it, within 10 seconds, if your first thought is to share it, that's a good sign that article someone would want to read. But to kind of go back what you were saying, clickbait titles, I mean, let's be honest, they do work. But I think that the meat of your article has to back up what your title stipulates. So it can't be something in your title where it doesn't corroborate well in your article. It has to speak to each other. And that's something that I'm very, very adamant about. I have worked with a lot of writers who used to have to send the articles to approve, and a lot of them would use these types of titles because at the end of the day, even writers have their own metrics that they have to reach, whether it be a certain amount of shares or a certain amount of reads. It's important. So it would be my job to make sure that the title, the text, the images, they all worked hand in hand. At the end of the day, I mean, it'll only help your publication and yourself if everything works.
Yeah, I mean, I was just curious about it because it's really just something that came up the last week. just in terms
It
of
is it's a very touchy subject. Yeah.
yeah, because it's like you want things to be read, but you also, I guess there's that fine line of like catching attention but not misleading.
Absolutely.
So it's just having to navigate that in the right way. So it's a journey we're going through also on the PR side on how do you get the word out in the right way that's still honest to like what the project's really about. But anyway, going back for the writer out there who's at home who wants to take that risk, what are your best tips for them when it comes to applying for a writing position or a job or even getting their article featured in any of these websites?
Just hearing you say that kind of brought me back to my time when I was in that stage. I think one thing to keep note of is this could work in any discipline is to really be stubborn with your vision. What I mean by that is writing is something that really interested me, but it's not something that I had a solidified background in. So I really, really push to kind of learn as much as I can. Sorry, just to go off track a little bit. I remember in the first few publications I worked for, I wasn't really comfortable with my craft yet. So I remember begging a lot of my then editors-in-chief to send me whatever guides that they had. And I would just literally comb through these guides so I can learn how to correctly put a sentence together. But to kind of go back to what you're saying, in terms of applying, for me, I took maybe you could say a different route. And I say that because in applying for places like High Snob and Hypebeast, two publications that I pinpointed as places that I wanted to work for. When I applied for them, they weren't even hiring at the time. I basically took it upon myself just to kind of reach out to them. I would think it pays to be creative with publications like this. So what I did was I wrote an article. I believe it was Public School. As you guys know, it's that New York streetwear brand. I think I wrote to one of their winter collections. I had sent a portion of that to Hypebeast and High Snob. I think I included the first two paragraphs. I left out the remaining, I think, 3 or 4. And I basically said that here's an article. I'm not looking to be paid. I really just wanted to work for the byline. That's really what I was fighting for. I wanted to be able to put them on my resume. And I said, if this is something that interests you, let me know and I'll provide you with the rest of the article. Not knowing or thinking that anyone would ever apply. But within that week, High Snob hit me up. They published the article and then they offered me a position right on the spot. It was to start off writing kind of like a menswear guide. I was writing articles like how to properly wear a white t-shirt. I think there was one, how to properly distress jeans. So I did that for a few months. And from that same article, Hypebeast eventually reached out and everything kind of snowballed from there. Kind of funny story, actually true story as well. I still have it. I actually remember writing down High Snob and Hypebeast on a piece of paper, and I actually folded it in my wallet before I actually started writing with them. And I looked at it every single time I had to open my wallet, every time I had to pay for something, anytime I wanted to remind myself. But I kind of wanted to keep it away from where people could see it. I mean, that's just the way I am. I had it in my wallet. So to kind of go back and answer your question, Vicky, if you're looking at certain publications that you want to write for and they're not hiring, that shouldn't deter you from applying. Reach out to the editor-in-chief, drop them a line, and try creative things. Write an article, maybe write an email with 5 pitches of different articles you'd like to attack and maybe how you would address them and see if that catches their attention. So things like that, when you're thinking outside of the box, appeals to people like that. And that's what I've learned anyway.
How about when you have something that they ask you to write, but you're not really feeling it? How do you go about that? Like, because it's like a little bit of we come across it as well. Sometimes we need to promote stuff that isn't really exactly our personal taste and we don't know much about. So how do you attack those kind of articles or those kind of promotions?
It's definitely an issue that all publications have to deal with, writers specifically. But in a case like that, if it's something where you have to write, let's not beat around the bush. There's really no way around it. So my suggestion is, it's going to sound really cliche, but do the best you can. I mean, at the end of the day, there is an audience and there is a following of someone who would like to read that. So I really just try to keep that in mind. I'm working for a bigger cause and we do have an audience, or when I was working with Hypebeast or High Snob, we do have an audience that people are looking to read these articles. So at some point it'll land on someone's eyes and hopefully it catches their attention. You really just have to keep that in mind. Not everything can be for you. But I mean, with that said, if I'm talking specifically about Hypebeast, I was in a position where, along with the other editors, I would dictate what actually gets put up onto the site. So a lot of that was alleviated, but in my earlier positions with other publications, that is something that I did have to deal with, if not on a weekly, not on a daily basis, at least a weekly basis. There are things that people want to read that you yourself artistically doesn't jive with you, but it will with someone.
What has been your favorite article to write?
Okay, so my favorite article, one that sticks out for obvious reasons, is I've been a fan of Pharrell for the longest time. It was revolving around climate change and global warming. It was a liquor company called Louis XIII. And basically what he did was he wrote a song that no one actually got to hear, but aside from press. So his whole angle was, if we don't do anything to target climate change and help the environment, in 100 years from now, we'll be submerged in water. And he made one printing of this song. He wrote it on clay, which as soon as the clay touches water, it will actually disintegrate over a certain point of time. So his message was, if we don't do anything now to help the planet, in 100 years from now, this song will never be heard. However, if our ancestors can get it right, this song could actually be heard. So there was this whole story around that. So they flew me out to Shanghai, had a chance to meet with him. I had my own kind of moment with him, had a chance to kind of talk off camera with him, which I'm going to kind of shamelessly plug myself. He didn't do that with all press. He liked, obviously, Hypebeast, and we had a whole conversation about my outfit, what I was wearing. He basically said my military aesthetic was fucking dope, quote unquote. He actually said those words. And coming from him, I was like, what the hell? I thought that was really cool. Yeah, so just having a chance to kind of meet with him and kind of find out how politically charged he is. He's not just a musician. He's not just a designer. I learned so much from that interaction with him. And then having a chance to kind of go back to Manila and kind of write that story was an amazing experience. Not just the piece itself, but just that whole forever will stand out to me.
Awesome. My next question was going to be, well, what was your biggest fan moment? Because
that was definitely it.
We've all been like, oh my gosh, I've been reading about you. That they're about you. And you're like, so it's Pharrell also, that moment.
It was definitely Pharrell. I mean, the funny thing is, because there was so much press there was press from all the major press blocks were there. Basically, because there was hundreds of outlets, we were kind of separated into press blocks. So in groups of 10, we were kind of put into a room with Pharrell where he kind of got to ask questions. He basically told me to hang back after everyone was done, which not everyone had a chance to do. So all the other press guys had to leave, and he basically just said, hang back for a sec.
Whatever, that never happened, bro.
It happened.
Are we?
Of course, I never really.
Are we gonna edit this out? I don't think it comes out. This whole story about Pharrell doesn't come out.
But yeah, so I had my moment with him, which I thought was really cool. So that was definitely a fanboy moment for sure.
How did you end up from Hypebeast and then also moving back to Canada?
I'm going to preface by saying that I left Hypebeast on great terms.
Okay.
My time with them was absolutely incredible. I learned so much, and that experience was absolutely invaluable. I still have contact with quite a few of them. We hit each other on Instagram. My exit from them is they were going to offer me a senior position, which I was on the cusp of taking. That 100% would have fostered a move to Hong Kong. And that's what I was kind of getting ready for. Long story short, I kind of had a change of heart. I was kind of choosing between, should I stay with Hypebeast, the known brand, the one that everyone knows, the company that's taught me so much and opened so many doors, or do I bet on myself again, take another chance, work for a company that might not be as large, but can kind of expand my creative breadth, so to speak, and kind of have my hand in more things. And long story short, I bet on myself, and I'm here now. Has it paid off? I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the story hasn't been written yet. I'm still writing that, but I'll let you guys know how that works out.
You've come a long way, actually. Going back again about in Canada, like we used to flip burgers together. I mean, I tell that to people, but I didn't even flip burgers. I was cleaning the washrooms. You were the one that was flipping burgers. But
okay, I didn't know the story.
What?
Really? I didn't know that story.
Yeah, I used to
Oh
clean
yeah.
washrooms like on my knees with like a toothbrush and whatever crappy material they had, substandard. No, I'm not gonna say that. But yeah, I used to clean washrooms, and my cousin was the cook. He used to prep the burgers, and he makes a mean ass burger. To be honest, like I don't know if a lot of people know this, but my cousin can cook as well a little bit. So that was the past, and you're a writer, but like today, that's sort of. I mean, you're still in the same industry of fashion and stuff, but you're doing something a little bit different now. Do you want to talk about what you're doing today? Because you're no longer with those publications, and I still think you're right, but you're with a new company that has a whole new. It's new. It's futuristic. Can you talk about
Yeah.
it?
We have technically launched yet, but we're still looking to kind of shore up our operations. But to kind of run that back, I work for a new company, and the object is to kind of blend machine learning, like artificial intelligence, and streetwear. So basically, if you're an up and coming designer, you might not have the resources to start your own capsule. Basically, our company can help with that. So we actually have a program where you can feed in a whole bunch of visual assets. So that could be maybe if you have a personalized logo, or if you take if you're a photographer, or for example, even if you're a musician and you want to use one of your old album covers, you can kind of upload that into our system. And basically the program will pre-populate kind of designs that we can relay onto a capsule collection. So onto a hoodie, onto a t-shirt, long sleeve crew, track pants. We're kind of starting with those core items right now because it is an upstart company. But the goal is, in a year from now, once our operations again shore up and become better at what we do, we can start attacking more customized cut and sew garments. So that could be anything from like bomber jackets or trucker jackets, anoraks, just things like that. So again, to quickly summarize, the basis is streetwear, but with a technological edge. As far as I know, and I don't know if this is true, I think we might be the only company doing that as of right now. So machine learning, streetwear, and fashion, I guess you can say. With that, I'm the head of content. So to kind of touch on what you were saying, Brent, I still do write, but I also take care of all the press materials. I'm also kind of taking part in a little bit of the in-house designs. So on top of outsourcing a lot of the, I guess you can say, garment designs, we're actually creating our own in-house collection. So I'm helping with coming up with designs, coming up with placements. I'm helping with the direct-to-garment printing. I have my hand in a little bit of the retailing, the warehousing, ordering of samples, contacting vendors. So it's a great progressive step for me. My core tenet is still writing. That's what I love to do. But as I mentioned before, I do love fashion. So it kind of allows me to have my hand in, I guess you can say, different pots, so to speak, which I find really, really satisfying.
Also, I just wanted to mention, so you said you didn't really do creative stuff until you started writing, but I will say this about you, like growing up, you were one of my cousins that were more stylish, and I did get a lot of inspiration from you. And that was a time when actually people dressed up because they wanted to dress up for themselves and look nice, as opposed to now where people are like dressing up to dress up for the gram, pretty much. I just want to say, I don't want you to discount that you were creative before. It was just in a different way, and it was just your exposure at the time.
It's really interesting when I'm picking up from you in terms of talking about your industry of it being machine learning and artificial intelligence, but at the same time, working with creativity, right? In this world, there's a lot of things that will be automated. What are some of the other aspects, apart from creativity, that you feel won't or can't be automated?
Yeah, there are so many things that are now being, and I guess you can say, enhanced by machine learning. But I can only speak for myself and what I know. I really don't see how at any point in time, well, at least I hope not, I can have a computer that can mimic what a human would do in terms of writing. And I say that because writing is artistic. It's not something that I ever used to think could be artistic, but it is. If you think about it in the sense where if you look at High Snob, Hype Beast, Complex, a a collection can drop from Louis Vuitton. Each person or each publication would have to write that exact same collection, looking at the exact same images, yet each publication will touch on different points. So there's no one unified way to write an article. And I don't see how, in the future, a computer can mimic something like that. And I would think that would be the case for, if not all creative disciplines, but for most. Machines can kind of take over the mundane tasks that people don't want to do, or, things that have progressive steps where you don't have to deviate too much in terms of creativity. But in the realm of creativity, who knows? I hope it doesn't go that way, but I don't see how it can.
So this happened a lot when I was starting my career, also in writing. I would mimic other writers because I didn't know myself, right? So I try to copy the voice of Complex, or the voice of Nylon, or the voice of, I don't know what else I was reading. And then eventually I was able to figure out how I sounded. So what would be your advice for writers who are still struggling to find their voice?
It's really, to be honest, what helped for me was really just practicing. An early publication that I really liked, and was actually the first one that I wrote for, was a UK style site called Fashion Beans. And I was reading them way before I started writing. So to kind of further what you were saying, that was a style of writing that I kind of gravitated towards. So I found that my early articles kind of adapted their voice. I kind of started spreading myself out in terms of reading other publications. I've always been an avid reader of magazines and novels. It was really just kind of practicing until I found my own voice, until things started coming to me on my own. What I used to do is actually, it's going to sound horrible after we just touched on this whole creative part, but I used to have this really, really structured format to how I used to write articles. So obviously you have an intro, you have the body, and you have a conclusion. The way that Fashion Beans used to do it is the first paragraph wouldn't even be about the actual subject matter. It was a very, very broad, very general kind of first person account leading into the subject. By the second or third article, you're talking about the actual product. By the third and fourth paragraph, you're talking about the inspiration. And then the fifth and sixth, you would close it up with a conclusion. And it was that kind of tight-knit structure that I used to follow almost religiously. And I don't find myself doing that now because I am comfortable in my own voice. But so just to kind of answer your question, it's really just practicing a lot until you feel really comfortable in your own voice, which might take a while, but it will come. And there was a point in time where I really didn't even think that would happen for me. Even though I thought that my articles, were solid, were compelling, people were reading them, I felt that, I don't want to say it was cheating in a sense, but I almost felt like it was kind of robotic, even though it was grammatically tight and structured the right way. I didn't really feel comfortable and happy with my style until I got to a publication called Lifestyle for Men, which was actually my very, very first editor job. So it wasn't until I got to that one where I really started to feel comfortable. But it took a lot of practice to get there.
Right now, there's a lot of people putting out content online. What we were talking about is we see there's going to be an influx of a lot of digital content, whether it be videos or articles or social media. What would be your advice to have really compelling online content?
I'm kind of noticing that right away. Even before this whole pandemic, it can be hard to navigate through all the other publications that are out there. The best way to do that, if you don't have an internal inherent following, is to find different angles to write different subject matters. The first part is obviously to have content that your core audience would find compelling. And just to kind of touch on that, I can't stress this enough, kind of writing for so many publications, but finding who your core audience is absolutely crucial, 100%. It may sound great to have anyone and everyone reading your stuff, but that's not always going to happen. So it helps to kind of pinpoint who will read it. And it's once you kind of know who's reading it, you can kind of tailor content to those people, which I think is really, really important, because you get to kind of know who your audience is, so you can kind of create engaging content geared directly towards them. And if you have a publication where, you know, the followers, readers leave you comments, which I get quite a bit in terms of leaving comments in the articles or sending me stuff through LinkedIn or Instagram, and not always good. I mean, you're going to have people who don't like what you're writing or don't like the content. I really kind of have an open ear to that while not taking anything too personal. I take it from a constructive mind frame to see how maybe that can steer me in the right direction to creating more compelling content. It's hard to navigate through all that, but I would think the best tips is to know exactly who you're writing for and trying your best to tailor an angle specifically for them.
Awesome. That's great advice. Just to wrap it up, theoretically speaking, how do you see the future looking like?
In terms of everything in general?
Yeah.
Kind of like we were talking about, like right off at the top. I don't even know if it was prior to the interview, but I was kind of mentioning in my last stand-up meeting with my team, the owner of the company was saying, and I tend to agree with him, is now that we're kind of forced to be indoors, a lot of people are hatching all kinds of creative ideas, which could, in essence, kind of alter the creative landscape once we come out of this pandemic. And that could be, it could be anything. It could be from how publications write. It could be how restaurants serve food. It could be how we consume and how we watch sporting events. It's hard to say, but you know, in terms of what people are doing, I know that in terms of what my company is doing, a lot of designers, artists, tastemakers, and a lot of people that I'm speaking to are collaborating with one another, trying to find different avenues to create products, content, to seeing if they can leverage the audience from the other person's following. So to answer your question, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint what it'll look like, but I do think it will be different, and in a lot of ways for the better. In terms of a lot of the ideas that are being out there now, I know that the mind frame that I had before this whole lockdown came in is I was so focused in on my job and trying to get this launched and not really looking elsewhere. But me being home now and reaching out to, you know, different artists, I'm kind of hearing what they're doing and hearing their stories. And these are conversations that I wouldn't be taking place, or that I wouldn't be having if I was going to my office in a regular setting. So yeah, I don't know how to answer that, but I'm optimistic that things will be better in a good way, at least from a creative standpoint. But only time will tell, I guess.
That was Rob Patos here on Theoretically Speaking. Just want to say thank you, Rob, for the time and sharing your insights with me and Vicky here today. There's a lot of knowledge that you dropped on us, and just want to say thanks again. I'll be in touch for sure. Talk soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate you reaching out, and yeah, thanks for letting me share my story. It's really interesting what you guys are doing, and I wish everyone the best, especially with this whole lockdown. I hope we all come out stronger for it. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob, and take care over there.
Thank you. You guys too.
All right.
And there you have it, a lot of knowledge, wisdom, and of course, humility from the one and only Mr. Rob Patos. Now, you guys can follow him on Instagram, and you can also follow us on Instagram. Follow us at Next Theory, at Victoria_Herrera, and at Brent Javier. And if you like this episode, don't forget to share it with a friend and share it on social media. Take a screenshot of whatever episode you're listening to, put it on IG stories, and tag us and let us know what you like about it. Looking forward to seeing all your posts. Take care.